I'd never guess. Aisha's life is a ghost chase, crushing her into nightly sobs, questioning if redemption's possible. But she didn't give up. Instead, she worked tirelessly, bearing all burdens on her slender shoulders, and Aisha still reminded her to take her medication daily. She was unaware John secretly stopped meds for a week to avoid being a couch potato, his mind becoming computer-like after. Words began linking up in his mind as he dove back into his research, but suddenly a shatter-like sound interrupted his train of thought, and he dashed outside, crossing a fence. He followed, as if led by a god deep into the jungle, when sudden bright beams struck like lightning. William returned, and John, though cautious, was again deceived by illusions and led to another secret base. Threatening him to continue the prior covert operations, John initially held onto a shred of sanity, thought it all a dream, but when William vowed to restore his grey lab identity, John agreed without hesitation as well. Wind swayed branches, dark clouds loomed, foretelling disaster, just when Aisha went to gather laundry. Subtitle: John offered to bathe the baby. He hesitated but trusted him. When Aisha finished laundry, the open fence and radio voices drew her attention. Following the sounds, she stumbled upon a dilapidated little cabin, and upon seeing the inside, Aisha was left dumbfounded, newspapers plastered all over like modern art gone wrong. Thinking of John bathing the baby, she gasped and rushed back in rain. Luckily, she arrived in time to save the baby from a dumpling fate. 10 seconds later, the outcome would have been disastrous, and one snarky comment from John became the last. Aisha, at her wit's end, held her child, ready to call the psych ward. John, fearing a return to that fun place, triggered his brain's defense, with illusion swelling. He rushed to stop William, but accidentally knocked his wife down. Aisha scooped up the kid and bolted out like a marathon runner. John stood stunned, illusions fading, as real past blended with false memories, revealing cracks in his schizophrenia. So he tossed caution to the wind and dashed to stop Aisha, with the director suggesting he check back into the hospital for a crash course in therapy. John wanted to fight mental illness with willpower, unable to bear the inhumane torture. He also didn't want his genius to drown, and although John didn't want Aisha to force him back to the loony bin, he stated that he would respect her decisions, while hoping she would leave him to avoid putting themselves in the line of fire. Aisha hesitated before sadly walking away. Just then, the sound of an engine roaring outside shattered the last shred of John's faith. Perhaps the utter unknown was his final resting place, but shortly after, Aisha snuck back like a ninja, looking like she had something crucial to share. Subtitles: This is indeed the reality. I simply have to believe it. It could be something magnificent. John felt relieved realizing Aisha was indeed real. No matter how bumpy the road ahead would be, head steadfastly stick with John, like paddling a tiny boat over the muddy swamps. After some time, John was back in the familiar university, clutching the handkerchief Aisha had given him, taking a deep breath to calm his nerves before knocking on the door of his old nemesis, Connor. Connor, now a renowned Princeton professor, was thrilled to see his old friend. Learning about John's predicament, he didn't give him too much hassle, happily offering him a chance to return to the campus. Just then, Charlie showed up, warning him not to lower himself before Connor. Connor was taken aback by this unexpected behavior, and John understood he was done getting a job from him, hoping just to stroll around. However, after a moment of deep thought, Connor threw him a curveball. Do you need an office? No. John finally landed a job, but on his first day, things went south as William flared up again. He raised his voice at thin air in front of everyone, as if trying to chase away invisible ghosts. Thankfully, Connor didn't ignore him. With a few calming words, John's frayed nerves settled down. At home, he confided in Aisha, saying maybe he should have listened to the doctor and checked himself into the loony bin. His wife held John's hand tightly, her eyes filled with tears yet resolute to try again tomorrow. In despair and struggle, Aisha always stayed to comfort. At last, John made up his mind, ready for a decent farewell with his old pals, the Fantasies, saying, John, you've always been such a good best friends. No more negotiations, just talks. John starts blending into normal society. His first step was to shadow a class at the university, soaking in the knowledge even with his fantasies trailing him like a loyal shadow. Day by day, year by year, John's mental state got better, and the genius mathematician stood out on campus, with students gradually adapting to their mad owl professor. Students actively sought him out. Aisha wept with joy at school. Why had he wasted years? John gave the perfect answer. After work, Connor encouraged John, saying he'd asked the school to let John teach a class alone as he was capable. Leaving, he invited John to a chess reunion. The same spot, the same duo, but this time the outcome didn't matter. One day, a stranger approached John after class. To confirm the stranger wasn't a figment of his imagination, he randomly called over a student, asking if they could see this person. During their conversation, the two individuals arrived at the restaurant where John and his mentor had jointly witnessed times of glory and wealth. John didn't understand the reason for the visitor's approach, as Novel News usually didn't leak it out early, even though the explanation arrived too late. Subtitles. John had figured out the purpose of the visitor's visit, and the fantasy still lingered in his mind. John knew that was a deep desire within him, just used to holding back. He also couldn't guarantee he'd hold it together on stage. But just as the words were spoken, an elderly scholar walked up to John and laid down the pen he had been carrying. And all the scholars rose, one by one, placing pens of utmost respect upon John's desk, and after decades of toil, John's life found its subtitles. If you've enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for even more exciting content.